You know, after we studied about the blowing of the 7 trumpets, what happened at the sounding of the 7th trumpet? Does anyone recall? This is back in chapter 11, the last few verses of chapter 11. Does anybody recall what occurred when the 7th trumpet sounded? That kind of worries me. I think that's the class that I taught. David.
Well, there was the rejoicing of victory.
Exactly. That is exactly right. And this is what we need to realize. The book of Revelation, as we said very early on, is almost like a mural. But like some murals, it has its completion in this picture, and then it'll give you another picture, and then maybe be the same thing that is occurring, but just painted a little different way. And that's the way it is in the book of Revelation. When the 7th trumpet is sounded, the war between the Christians and their persecutors had ended, as far as that picture is concerned. Victory belongs to Christ. Victory belongs to His saints. And David was pointing out that there was, praise on the part of the Christians, and indeed there was. God's redeemed from all ages were responding with praise and honor to God because of this victory. And the temple of God has now been opened. And I think that's the last verse of chapter 11. And the ark is seen, the ark of the covenant, which indicated God's presence was with them. And His sovereignty is completed. The enemies have been destroyed. But what we need to, when we think about thinking about the ark of the covenant being seen, God's presence is there. This is really the entire theme of the book of Revelation. However, we need to realize that these Christians were still going through tremendous suffering. God said, okay, the victory is achieved. The victory is going to occur, but here's the reality. Even after this letter had been read to the 7 churches, these Christians were going to be facing severe persecution. There were going to be members of the church at Pergamos, members of the church at Smyrna, members of the church at Philadelphia, and all of these other churches that are going to be drug out and be killed. It was still going to happen. No matter what this book was saying, these are the realities of their existence. And so, in my estimation, there would have been some questions on the minds of these believers. Some of the things that they were going to be asking, why are we being treated like this? We're just people who love God. And we're just people who've obeyed the gospel. Why are we being treated like this? They're going to be wondering, what have we done? What have we done to the Roman Empire? What have we done to the government, the powers that be, that caused this kind of persecution? Why are these things happening to us? Why are we so hated? We serve the Prince of Peace. We preach peace. Why are we hated as troublemakers? When will this horror ever end? And then ultimately, I think they may be asking the question, where is God when we're hurting? Now, the reason that I bring these questions up that possibly could have been on the minds of the Christians is because of what's said in chapters 12 and 13. Because chapters 12 and 13 answer these possible questions that were on the minds of Christians. You want to know why you're hated? Let me tell you. You want to know why you're going through what you're going through? I'll explain to you. And that's really what chapters 12 and 13 are all about. Answer to those queries that they may have had in their mind. You take, for instance, early in chapter 12, this sign that appears in heaven. A woman clothed with sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head, garland of 12 stars. Then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. Now, somebody may say, how's this going to answer the question? Well, it does if you stay with the picture there. I'm going to tell you, the idea of being shrouded in light connects her to God, because God is light and in Him is no darkness at all. And so what we see here is we see someone connected with God. But this one connected with God is about to give birth. Let me tell you who this isn't. This is not despite what a lot of people think, this is not the Virgin Mother, as Roman Catholicism would teach as being the Queen of Heaven. You see a lot of pictures like this of the Virgin Mary. And she has a lot of description about her, the stars and so forth and so on, as though this is the woman of chapter 12. That's not so. She's not pictured, Mary is not pictured in this illustration. What is pictured here? You studied about this on Wednesday night. What's pictured? Say again? Exactly. This is the faithful of God. This is the remnant, the faithful of God, through whom the Messiah was to come. Remember, get the picture, then get the message. All of this is symbolism. All of this is sign. This is the people of God through whom the Messiah, the male child, the Son was to come that would rule the world with a rod of iron. Now, keep that in mind because of what is seen next in the picture. There's another sign that appeared in heaven, a great fiery dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 diadems on his head, his tail grew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Now, so these are two signs that are seen. But now we're getting to the answer to the question, because the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. What's the message? You've got the visual. What's the message? Persecution. The effort of the devil to destroy Christ. That's the picture that you want to see. Now, understand this when you read, let's say, in the 2nd chapter of the book of Matthew. When Herod the Great intended to kill all of the children, he intended to he was carrying out what the serpent or what the dragon wanted to be carried out. He tried to destroy the male child, the Son who was to rule the nations with a rod of iron. Now that's the picture, and that's the message. So what you see in chapter 12 is the devil is out to destroy Christ. That's what the devil intends to do. He intends to destroy the Messiah. Then he talks about a war that broke out in heaven between Michael and his angels and the dragon and the dragon's angels. And so there's this big war, this big battle going on. Is this a literal confrontation that occurred in heaven? We studied about this Wednesday night. Okay, you've seen the visual. What's the picture? Say again? Exactly. Michael, who is pictured, Michael is an archangel. As a matter of fact, Michael is the only one in Scripture that's ever referred to as an archangel. If you read in the book of Daniel, he is the prince of Israel. He is the protector of Israel. And so this is just the protector of God's people is bad. As a matter of fact, you read in the book of Jude, he disputed with the devil over the body of Moses. And so there's always this conflict between Michael and Satan. Now what we see in the book of Revelation is this big battle. And the devil loses this battle. And the devil is thrown out. And the dragon was enraged with the woman. He was thrown out to the earth, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So what we get from chapter 12 is the answer to the question, why are we going through this? Who's behind it? The devil is behind it. The devil tried to defeat Christ, and he failed. And so guess what? He's turned his attention to you. He couldn't defeat the Christ. He was drawn back up into heaven. He's now seated at the right hand of God. The devil failed. So now, the devil failed, so now the devil turns his attention to Christians. But now, the devil is not going to do this personally. The devil is going to employ certain allies as his henchmen. That's one of the things we've got to understand. The devil is not omnipotent. The devil is not omniscient. He doesn't have the qualities and the attributes of God. And so what the devil is going to do is employ people or employ certain elements in society to do his dirty work. That's what chapter 13 tells us. Chapter 13 tells us who the allies of the devil are. And they're pictured as beasts. And so keep that in mind. Chapter 12 sets down who's behind it, the devil. Chapter 13 tells us who the devil is going to use to carry out his purpose. He's going to use this beast, and he's going to use this beast. But again, keep in mind, we're seeing symbols, pictures. We have to get the message that is behind the pictures. Now, getting into chapter 13, I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. Now, this is an ally that the devil is going to use in his war against Christians. Having 7 heads and 10 horns, on his horns 10 crowns, and on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. Oh, and by the way, the devil, the dragon, gave him his power. The dragon gave him his throne. And the dragon gave him his great authority. So you see, now that connects him back with chapter 12, who's behind it all. Now, to understand this, I want to review something that we talked about in our introduction to the book of Revelation, when we were talking about the dating of the book. Well, to do that, let me ask you a question. If we wanted to probably get an Old Testament visual of this beast, where would we go? Anybody got any idea? Daniel 7. In Daniel 7, in a vision that Daniel has, he sees a beast like a lion. And he's really doing the same thing that was done in chapter 2. He's identifying 4 world powers. Babylon is the first. The combined power of the Medes and the Persians, or the Persian Empire, was the second. The Grecian Empire, and then the Roman Empire. In the book of Daniel, he describes Babylon as a winged lion. He describes the Persian as a leopard, or as a bear with ribs in his mouth. And the Grecian Empire is described as a leopard with 4 heads. And then the final beast is just indescribable. Daniel can't even describe him. He's so hideous looking. And so what you find is these 4 empires, they succeeded one another, and they took on the characteristics of the one that they defeated. And by the time you get to the book of Revelation, you see this beast that's coming out of the sea, which is actually the 4th beast, and it's a combination of them all. Now, how many heads did the beast have to come out of the sea? 7 heads. How many heads are here? 7. The leopard had 4, then the other 3 beasts each had 1 head, 7 heads. See? So, what's the visual here? I mean, that's the visual. What's the message? What is the beast that came out of the sea? If it's a combination of all 4 of these world empires, one succeeding the other, what is that beast that came out of the sea? Exactly. What he saw when he saw this beast that rose out of the sea, he's seeing the Roman Empire that receives all of its authority from the devil, receives its power from the devil. And so what he sees is, when he sees this beast, he doesn't really see a literal hideous-looking creature here. He sees the hideous Roman Empire that the devil is using in his war against the saints, you see. And he goes on to talk about this in this chapter as far as what this beast is able to accomplish. He's got the dragon gave him his great power. I saw one of the heads that had been mortally wounded. That's interesting. 7 heads and one looks like it had been wounded, but it lived. Now there's a lot of interesting thoughts about that. Well, sometimes people tend to literalize a lot. In this, and what you see here. There's a common idea in the first century that, when Nero died, that he actually rose again and was living with the Parthians, and he was going to lead a Parthian invasion of Rome to once again seize the throne. That was an idea, and a lot of people think that this is what they see here. Others think what they see here is that Nero died and persecution subsided a little bit, and then it was resurrected during the reign of Domitian. These could be it could be what you see here. I tend to think really what you see here is what appears to be the power of the Roman Empire that just doesn't seem like it's going to be able to be crushed. Who can make war against this beast? Who can overcome this beast? Well, he's got a head that's been killed, right? You're not going to be able to defeat him. And so that's what I think. That's what I think you see here. He speaks blasphemous things. He's able to. It's been granted to him to make war with the saints, and he's got authority over every nation, every tribe, every tongue, every family. It's just this. What you see here is the Roman Empire. Lance?
I think there's a tie to Revelation 17 and the description, the similar description of that beast is breaking that down to 7 kings related to the 7 heads.
Right.
It goes further in description about those 10 horns, potentially what's involved with them, and how that still relates probably to the Roman Empire.
It does. It relates to the Roman Empire. What I'm trying to get us to see here is this beast represents the Roman Empire that rose out. And an interesting thing about rising out of the sea, that certainly indicates that it was a foreign entity. It came, travelers come from the sea. This came out of the sea. It was foreign to Asia Minor, where a lot of this persecution was taking place. But then, and I'll go back to, I forgot about this chart. This kind of goes back and connects with a prophecy in Daniel 7. The fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom. See what we were talking about? Which shall be different from all other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trample it, break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. And another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones. Shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words. Remember the blasphemies that Revelation is talking about. Against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High. That's who the devil is using. That's back from the book of Daniel, chapter 7. And he'll intend to change times and laws, and the saints shall be given into his hand for a time, and times, and half a time. See that? What is that times, time, and half a time? David?
An incomplete or indefinite period of time.
And that's equivalent to
3.5,
3.5.
half 7.
Yeah, 3.5. It's going to be temporary. It's not going to be a permanent thing here. But now, we've identified the beast that came out of the sea, which is the Roman Empire that the devil is going to use to persecute Christians. There's another beast that rises out of the earth, not out of the sea. Verse 11, then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. And he had 2 horns like a lamb. Now, I'll stop right there. Now, this next beast that he sees seems to be a rather innocent-looking beast. It's a lamb. 2 little horns. Now, who else is pictured as a lamb in the book of Revelation? Christ. Christ, the lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. Because of his resurrection, the slain lamb is worthy to open the 7 seals and reveal the contents of the book. This is a different lamb. This lamb speaks for whom? Huh? Yeah. I saw another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Now, who's the dragon? The devil. This is the second ally of the devil that's mentioned in Revelation 13. The first is the Roman Empire. The second is this lamb who speaks for the devil. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and all those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. He, that is the Lamb, performs great signs. Well, he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast. Telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should speak, and cause many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, receive rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell, except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of the beast. What we have here is, I want to go back and I want to use an analogy that Jesus used one time. Although it's not an analogy that necessarily totally 100% applies here, but we'll get a picture of what we're looking at here when we see this lamb-like creature who speaks for the dragon. What we see here is what Jesus would refer to as a wolf in sheep's clothing. This beast is not what he seems to be. This is a beast that looks like a lamb, but in reality is ready to devour. This beast looks innocent, but in fact has the power to put to death those who do not worship the first beast. Now, Jesus uses that analogy over in Matthew chapter 7 and verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves. They're not what they appear to be. Now, this beast that is seen here is able to do these miraculous things in the sight of all. And that's always interested me when I read about what the magicians in Egypt were able to do in duplicating the signs of Moses and Aaron. It's interesting when you read in the New Testament what the exorcists were able to do who went around, practicing exorcism. Or even Simon in Acts chapter 8 is seemingly able to perform miracles. Were these real miracles these people performed? Was these real signs that this beast was able to do? Or could they have just been deceptive signs? Because Paul talks about in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 9 through 11, that the man of sin is going to be able to seemingly do these miracles. But then you find out in verses 10 and 11 of 2 Thessalonians, if you don't have a love for the truth, you can be deceived and believe anything. I can remember prior to becoming a Christian, when Sue and I were members of a denomination, we believed in miraculous divine healing that was occurring today. And we've been to a lot of healing revivals in which we saw some remarkable things that occurred that were able to deceive you if you didn't have a love of the truth. So I'm not saying that that he didn't have these powers. The Bible said, but were they real? Were they pseudo? Whatever. But what we're seeing here is false religion. The Lamb is false religion. Now, he's mentioned other places in the book of Revelation, but he's never again referred to as a beast that came out of the Lamb. Somebody tell me what he's referred to. Take it? No, we'd have to go back to John to get that. And a lot of times this is kind of a description that we have. But the book of Revelation actually refers to this same beast in a very interesting way. David?
False prophet.
False prophet. 3 times he's referred to in the book of Revelation, not as the beast that came out of the Lamb, but he's referred to as the false prophet. So what you have here is you have false religion. You have that religion that was able to force people to worship the beast, which would, of course, have been the emperor or Rome itself. But this is the false prophet. Ray Summers, in his book Worthy is the Lamb, had this very interesting observation, and it's an observation with which I tend to agree. He said all these characteristics, that is what we've just read there, seem to identify the second beast as the commune of the concilia set up in Asia Minor to enforce state religion. This was an official body in charge of the state religion and had as its duty to force all to do homage to the image of the emperor. So what you see here are the allies of the devil. Now the devil is going to make war on the saints. Now how's the devil going to do it? He's going to use the full force of the Roman government, and he's going to use this commune, this false religious body, to force people to worship the image of the beast. And so this is what we're seeing here in this chapter, the allies of the devil. Now what's interesting is once we get over into chapter 14, God's going to say, but I got a team too. You've seen the devil's team? The devil's team is Rome and the false prophet. Let me tell you who my team is. My team is the 144,000 and the Lamb. And that's, how is 144,000 and a lamb going to be able to handle this? Well, we'll see as the book of Revelation unfolds. Any questions, any comments about that? Any observations that you'd like to bring out about this moment?
Well, the dragon knows that most men can't believe in an unseen God. They've got to see Nebuchadnezzar's statue.
Touch. Look at. Yeah.
So this is what's going to draw man. And then you get to falling in love with that, and anybody who is against that, well, you've got to get rid of them, like Paul against Christians. You've got to stomp them out. That's what your leader will say.
This is exactly what is unfolding here. And this is what the writer is reminding the Christians. This is why this is happening to you. This is who's behind this. You know, Rome, yeah, they're used to stamp out Christianity or try to stamp out Christianity, but it's really because they're at war with God, and they were unable to defeat the Christ, and so now they've turned their attention to you. I think it's the next slide here that I want to put up. So no, really what we're talking about here, this second beast is emperor worship. That's what first beast, Rome, second beast, emperor worship. They're the two allies of the devil. Now what is interesting is this is a correspondence that was uncovered. And it was written sometime between 111 and 113 A.D. That would have been less than 2 decades. That would have been less than 20 years after the book of Revelation was written. And it was written by Pliny, the governor of Bithynia, and he wrote it to Emperor Trajan. And here's what he said to the emperor. He said, an anonymous document came in with many names. That is, accusations of people who were Christians. They kind of ratting out people. Well, these are Christians. These people are Christians. He said, an anonymous document came in with many names. I dismissed those, that is, names on the list, who said they were not or never had been Christians, and who in my presence supplicated the gods and placed wine and incense before your image, and especially cursed Christ, which I hear no true Christian will do. So what you see here, you see that they had this body of people, or had this body that was that had the power in Rome to force people. And notice what this letter suggests. Number one, you had to deny that you were or ever had been a Christian. But that wasn't enough. Then you had to burn incense to the image of the emperor. But that was not enough. Then you had to curse the name of Christ. Now, if you did that, then you could walk out free, and you could continue buying, and you could continue selling, and you could continue with your life. But you had to do those 3 things. And if you did If you didn't, then there were severe consequences that occurred. You either lost your life or your ability to have a business, or you saw the lives of your family destroyed or killed. And so this is what the second beast was able to do. He was able to force this upon these Christians. And so the first beast is Rome. Second beast is emperor worship. These were the allies of Satan. These were answering the question, why are we going through this? What have we done? Who is behind this? And so it's laid out very clearly in these chapters. Satan is behind it. But Satan is not going to do this personally. He's got two allies that he's going to use. The full power of the government of the Roman Empire and false religion. Now let me stop right here, and I want to make an observation too. It is real easy. It is real easy for us, in the quiet confines of this building, look at what happened in the long, long ago. We look back at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we see the commitment of those young men in Babylonian captivity to stand up to the powers that be and say, you know what? You can kill us. We're not going to bow down to the image. And we sit in our Bible classes and we marvel at that. And we'll come to a Bible class like this and we'll look at those Christians in the first century and what they were going through and the commitment that they had. They didn't love their lives to the point that they would deny Jesus. No true Christian would. Finally said that. And we look at it and we marvel at that. But now we're living in a culture and we're living in an age where we see many similar things occurring here. We see the blending of false religion with the power of the government. And there's a merger that's taken place exactly like it occurred in the first century. I can think of some things that recently have occurred that we maybe do or do not know about. And if we know about them, we just sort of brush them aside and say, well, that doesn't really apply to us. You take what happened in Houston. With the powers that be, the government demanding that these preachers turn over their sermons to be inspected by the government or else face consequences. Same thing that you're seeing here. The blending of powers that be, the government, and false religion. And you think what also recently happened? That, and I can't recall where this was occurring, but the government told these preachers in a certain area, if you will preach on global warming, and you will preach on environmental issues, and things that really the false religion of environmentalism is behind, if you will preach these, then we will give you these benefits. If you don't, then you're going to be taxed. But if you'll do these, then you won't be taxed. And so there's the blending of this. Now, what are we going to do? You take right now. Right now. There are other religious bodies other than God's people who oppose same-sex marriage. But I'm going to tell you, by the time maybe some who are in our younger classes downstairs, maybe in the 5th and 6th grade class downstairs, by the time they're in the high school class, believe me, the Church of Christ is going to be the lone voice in the wilderness standing opposed to same-sex marriage. And then we'll feel the full weight of the powers that be. What are we going to do then? Are we really going to marvel at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's commitment? Are we going to marvel at the commitment of these first century Christians while we ourselves compromise? We've got to learn. This is not just an exercise of historical information. This is God giving a warning to His people. There are no rooms for compromise here. You can't do any of these things that are demanded of you and be pleased. You can't do it. And so I'm telling you, these are great chapters for us to read, but let's not lose sight of the pertinent application that we need to make. And I'm sorry that I got on a soapbox and now I stepped back. Any comments? Yeah, Richard?
The scary part about that is, what was the series of lessons you had on Islam? On radio?
A lot of times that was looked at as just being an extreme view.
Yeah, yeah. And look at it now, how much it's gaining traction. And he was talking about the mark of the beast, going back, over there in the Middle East. If you don't have this certain identification, things how it's going to work.
But Richard, that may not even matter as far as the Middle East is concerned. Look at this last person who was beheaded. He had converted to Islam right here in Hendricks County. And he took an Islamic name. And yet, he was killed. Now, let's look at the last part of the chapter. He, that is the second beast, the false religion, the emperor worship, causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now, that's how we usually look at that. Mark of the beast, 666, right across the forehead, or 666 right on the hand. That's what we look at. I remember a few years ago we got a license plate. That license plate had 6666. And they asked Sue at the license bureau, is that license plate okay? And she said, yeah, it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And I told everybody, I said, well, that's not the mark of the beast. I said, it's Sue's car. It's the mark of the beast egg. But this is how we usually look at that. We look at that as just that hideous, heinous, awful number that was placed upon the hand or the forehead of the people. Then we also know, as we look at what is said in verse 18, here's wisdom. All right, now we need to get wise. We need to wise up here, but we can figure this out. Let him who has understanding calculate. Now you can calculate. You can figure this out. The number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. And so people have been calculating and trying to figure this out for years. And let me show you how they usually do this. Here's how it usually happens. It's often done by what we call the cryptic method. And that is what we do is we make a letter equal to a number. You know, sort of like we do in the Roman numerals. You've got letters that equal numbers. And so that's what. And what they do is they usually take the Greek alphabet, and they'll make each one of the numbers of the Greek alphabet each one of the letters of the Greek alphabet represent a number. This is the cryptic method of determining who is talked about here. For example, you might take alpha, be 1, beta 2, gamma 3, delta 4, epsilon 5, and zeta 6. And so then you'll get these names and you'll figure this out. But then sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. And so what they do is they kind of change that. Well, what that means is alpha's 10, beta's 20, gamma's 30, and so on and so forth. You know, all the way up to omega. And so they're trying to figure this out. And so somebody comes up with it, well, I got it figured out. I know who he's talking about. What? He's talking about Nero. That is using the cryptic method here. Now somebody said, well, that doesn't really add up, and so the cryptic method that I use, I come up with Domitian. And then you take somebody that has the continuous historical view of the book of Revelation, and you know who they make who they make that mean? That's got to be the Roman Catholic Pope. Or that's got to be Muhammad of Islam. Then you have the Catholics who say, no, that's not true. That's Martin Luther or the Reformation movement. Then you've got the premillennial who says, well, no. And they've come up with different ideas throughout the century, from Adolf Hitler to Barack Obama. Or they say it's the end-time Antichrist that is to occur. Who is it? Anybody said, JR, I'm done with you. Who is it? Who's he talking about here? Not talking about anybody. How do you know that? And I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. Here's the interesting thing, and I know I didn't get to my question today. I was afraid that I wouldn't, but I wanted us to spend a lot of time because this is kind of foundational here. Let's remember the numerology of the book of Revelation. 6 is a sinister number, like our number 13. You go in a lot of big buildings, they do not have a 13th floor. Go from 12 to 14. People on the 14th floor don't realize they're really on the 13th floor. but it's kind of an evil number here, and that's the way it is in the book of Revelation. Now, I'm going to give you 3 other translations that I think are very interesting. Not that I categorically endorse these translations, but I think they handle the verse 18 fairly well. God's Word translation translates verse 18 as saying, in this situation, wisdom is needed. Let the person who has insight figure out the number of the beast, because it is a human number. Same is said with the New English translation. It is man's number, and the International Reader's Version says the same thing. It is man's number. So that's what's interesting about this. He isn't talking about this identifying a certain person. What he says is, this is man's number. This is not divine. This does not come from God. You know, in the book of Revelation, we read in chapter 4 and verse 8 that God is holy, holy, holy. That would be equivalent to saying 777. God is perfect in every kind of way. Man, on the other hand, falls short of perfection. He's 666. So as intimidating and as fierce as the Roman Empire was, and despite the power that the officials who forced emperor worship and in the face of the power of Satan who was behind it all, it is a human system. And ladies and gentlemen, all human systems are destined to fail, including that. So rather than being divine, all human systems are doomed to failure and eternal destruction 3 times over. 6, 6, 6. Oh, I'm done. I have to quit. No questions today.